I didn't have any second thoughts about this. The only part that worried me was the potential embarrassment for the people I was meeting, because it was a difficult situation for them.
I just remember through a whisper we heard it was happening. He was like the mystery man.
This was the worst crisis that had ever hit the community. We couldn't abandon them. I have severe haemophilia B, which is the second most common type of haemophilia. When I was 24, my uncle was on the board of the Irish Haemophilia Society. He had haemophilia himself, and he said to me, "Look, Brian, would you consider coming on the board?" I mean, that was 1982, and we were a small organisation with no staff, no office, a number of volunteers. So it was very much a community-based organisation.
There weren't many jobs in Ireland for nurses, but by chance I got a job in St. James's Hospital. I found myself working on what was called the top of one. There were 3 sections on the top of one: the oncology or cancer wing, the hematology for the leukemias and blood disorders, and then the HIV unit. And I'd never heard of HIV before.
In 1983, we started to develop a level of concern about this new disease called AIDS. Medical consensus out there at the time was that there was no proof that this was a blood-borne virus, that people shouldn't be panicking about this, and that even if it was, the chances of anybody being exposed were absolutely minimal. Haemophilia is where one of the clotting factors that help the blood to clot is missing. What you do is you replace that by giving injections of the clotting factor. Now, in the 80s, the clotting factor injections were made from pools of donated plasma. So you would have thousands of litres of plasma used to make batches of clotting factor concentrates. So in getting one injection, a person with haemophilia was being potentially exposed to 20,000-30,000 people at one time. Blood tests were being taken, people didn't know if they had been exposed to this virus. That was very scary for people, because for the first time they saw somebody with haemophilia with full-blown AIDS, and they looked thin, they looked emaciated, they looked scared, and that was quite frightening for the community.
Everybody was overwhelmed and sad that this virus on the HIV unit seemed to be relentlessly killing everybody who came into that unit. We had some, we couldn't say it at the time, but homosexual men, gay men in the unit, but absolutely you couldn't say they were gay. But sadly, they were dying as well, the same as hemophiliacs or intravenous drug users or others who were positive. Really, I hadn't taken care of so intimately somebody who's your own age, who can't get out of bed. The uniform gave you a crutch, and it gave you that almost permission, to cry with people, or, you can't break down when everybody is really sick and dying, but families understood that we were like family to them, towards the end. We kept thinking, surely we'll get more information, a cure or treatment will come better. But during those years, it didn't. Everybody died.
Government was doing nothing. Society was doing nothing. To a large extent, it was seen in society as something you didn't talk about. If the public spoke about HIV or AIDS, they were scared of this. It was a plague.
I don't think I saw anything in the newspapers, in the cinema. Never heard anybody talking about it. It was almost blanket out and it might go away, but it didn't.
At that time, there had also been a publication in the UK expressing concern for the first time about sexual transmission of this virus. It was very difficult for people to actually access condoms. You had to go to a doctor to get a prescription to get condoms. If they went down to their local small town, perhaps they might be very embarrassed going to the GP and then go to the local chemist, who may either sell them condoms or throw holy water over them. It had been made eminently clear to us that the hospitals could not provide condoms and would not provide condoms. They didn't have a budget for this and they just couldn't do it. They weren't allowed to do it. So if they were to be provided, we would have to do it. I was really angry that this had happened to our community. I felt they were being ignored. It was as clear as day to me that we had to do whatever we could. It seems incongruous now, but it was quite a radical proposal for a charity to be providing condoms, which was actually an illegal thing to do. So first of all, I had to research where, I had no idea where to buy condoms. I found out that there was one illegally operating clinic in Carlbrew Street. I think it was the Well Woman Centre. So I went with the money in my pocket from the funds provided by the society. I went into this clinic. I was nervous and I was embarrassed. There was a queue of 5 or 6 all women in the clinic. When I made my way up to the counter, I asked the lady behind the counter, they had condoms on display, and I said, which of these are the strongest? Because you also want, strong condoms. And she pointed out one brand. And I said, do they have non-oxyl 9 lubricant? And she said, they do. And I said, right, I'll take 100 dozen, please. And I said it in as low a voice as I could. And she said, 100 dozen? And behind me I heard, Jesus, it's Superman. That morning, before going to work, I would put a cardboard box in my car full of condoms, full of packets of condoms. I'd finish work at 5 p.m. I'd drive down to St. James's, park there outside the clinic where people with haemophilia were being seen and were being given their results.
One day I do remember looking out the top of one, out through the window, and seeing a car at the bottom of the building. We're about 3 stories up. The boot open and condoms were being provided, I understand.
A lot of them were shell-shocked. They just got their results. So they were just coming out having been told that they had HTLV3 antibodies. We talked this through, some very direct conversations, some very excruciatingly difficult conversations. It was embarrassing for them, it was embarrassing for me. We didn't keep a logbook, I didn't keep a note, but we just gave them as many as they wanted.
I didn't even know then that condoms were legal or illegal. I'd certainly never seen them, even as a nurse midwife. And I thought, how difficult for these men to have to walk down the stairs or over from outpatients to pick up something that they did not want to use, that they'd never seen in their lives, that they probably weren't educated on how to use, and then how to explain this with their primary partner or their wife, that they needed to use it if they were going to prevent HIV. Death was the outcome. There was no other outcome at the time. So any of us who understood the reality definitely wanted to prevent anybody else becoming infected.
This is Jerome Stevens. Jerome is one of the men with haemophilia who contracted HIV from his medical treatment, and he very bravely spoke publicly about this, which helped us to, in our advocacy campaigns, to try and get proper help and support for people with haemophilia with HIV. He was very brave, and some years after this he died of AIDS when he was 34.
Do you hold the government responsible for the condition you find yourself in any way?
Yes, because it's their duty to protect us, and we weren't protected.
Coming back to work, getting off the bicycle, getting out of my civvies, into my uniform, walking up to the ward, you were looking in wondering, is so-and-so still there? Are they still there? I hope they're still there. I know, and I do remember ward sisters senior staff stopping me on days that they knew I was going to be upset, you know, to find out one of the young people had died. It kind of went ahead of our capacity to grasp the reality. Like, they should be here, but treatment just didn't come in time for them. I'll never forget the bravery and beautiful human beings who were affected by all of this. And all the people who did stand up and do something at the time. They just did it.